when Hidayah greeted the warden of Guantanamo prison. Faith can knock anyone's heart, including an atheist, Guantanamo prison warden, Terry Holdbrooks Jr. Serving in the prison 10 years ago, Terry admitted that he received guidance after seeing the behavior of the prisoners, most of whom were innocent. Since joining the military and being assigned to Guantanamo from 2003-2004, Holdbrooks was taught that Islam is the same as terrorism, cruel, inhumane, and sadistic, reflecting on the events of 9/11. "Remember what the Muslims did to us. Remember who you are protecting," the sergeant said at the time to the soldiers. Speaking at the Huntsville Islamic Center last Saturday, as reported by Al.com, Holdbrooks said that he felt lied to while serving at Guantanamo. What he imagined at that time was that the prisoners had fierce and violent faces, but not. Instead, he found doctors, taxi drivers, professors, and even a 12-year-old boy, completely harmless, but labeled a terrorist. "I started thinking, am I being lied to?" said the 29-year-old. He saw for himself that the prisoners were the opposite of what he had been taught. They orderly read the Quran, performed the 5 daily prayers, and remained calm even under the heaviest pressure. One of Holdbrooks' duties at that time was to escort prisoners to the interrogation room. In this place, he knew that they would be tortured and asked the same questions every day until they confessed or were forced to admit something they didn't do. Some were very tormented, others accepted it patiently. This is what surprised Holdbrooks. "How can you wake up in Guantanamo and still smile? How do you believe there is a God who cares about you?" Holdbrooks asked the prisoners. One of them answered, "I like spending time at Guantanamo. Allah is testing my faith. When else can I spend 5 years without doing anything? Just reading the Quran, I can read it and learn Arabic and train mentally." Since then, Holdbrooks started talking to them. Some people even taught him about ethics, philosophy, history, and religion. Many of the prisoners even denied the 9/11 events. According to them, it violated Islamic teachings. "I have all the freedom in the world, but instead, I suffer. Here they have nothing, but are happy. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on in their hearts," Holdbrooks said. Embracing Islam. Finally, Holdbrooks began to study Islam. So far, he has admitted to being an atheist because all the religions he has studied have not been able to calm him down. He thought at that time, monotheism was the root of all misery. Because of that, he chose not to be religious. But when he read the Quran for the first time, he found many thoughts that were included in its logic. "This book all makes sense from beginning to end. It doesn't contradict each other. It's not magic. It's just simple instructions on how to live life," he said. After 3 months of intense study, he finally decided to embrace Islam. He said it to one of the inmates. But the answer was no, surprising Holdbrooks. Finally, the Guantanamo inmate explained it. Becoming a Muslim, the inmate said, meant Holdbrooks had to change his lifestyle, arrange his meals, stop drinking alcohol, stop talking harshly, and remove the tattoos he has. Apart from that, he must be ready to face changes in his social life, including in the army, family, and government. But his determination was firm, and he finally said 2 sentences of the Shahada. He claimed to have found health, discipline, and peace of mind, things he had not found before. "Every little step I took towards Islam, Islam ran towards me," Holdbrooks said. Dismissed from the military. It was only in 2009 that Holdbrooks decided to become a true Muslim. He carried out all of Allah's commands and prohibitions, including observing Sunnah fasting every week. He was eventually discharged from the military on the pretext of having a personality disorder. His wife divorced him after learning that her husband had converted to Islam. He married a nun he met at a mosque through a ta'aruf process. Now, he is a member of the Muslim Legal Fund of America, an American Islamic organization that advocates for changes in government policy. He travels around, telling his story. To Muslims in the country, he advised not to be afraid. Don't be afraid to be Muslim in public. Tell your neighbors you are Muslim. Invite them to your house. Invite them to the mosque to see what a bomb-making factory really is, he said. Terry Holdbrooks Jr., 29, now has a bushy beard. If he goes to a restaurant, he will choose to sit at a table facing the wall. He also often looks away from the camera. Holdbrooks said he studied Islam since he was a guard at the United States prison at Guantanamo Bay in 2003-2004. He admitted that he often had discussions late into the night with Muslim prisoners while on duty there. From many discussions, he became more familiar with Islam and finally decided to embrace Islam, as reported by Al.com, Sunday, 26-5. He told his life story at the Huntsville Islamic Center, United States, last Saturday, in front of around 80 people. Regarding the recent news about a hunger strike by 102 of Guantanamo's 166 prisoners, he said those prisoners should have been released 5 or 6 years ago. They were desperate. They decided they would rather die. One of them only weighed 70 pounds, Holdbrooks said. He is currently touring with Khalil Meek, co-founder and executive director of the Texas Muslim community, to raise money for a non-profit organization that advocates for the legal rights of Muslims in need. I also wrote my story in a book that is easy for ordinary people to digest. They will understand that Guantanamo prison is something shameful. I have become a Muslim, but I am not a traitor, said Holdbrooks. One of his duties when he was a guard at Guantanamo was to escort detainees for interrogation and take them back to their cells. Holdbrooks knows all too well how stressed prisoners are when faced with repeated questions and during torture. How can you still smile in Guantanamo? How can you believe there is a God protecting you? He once asked a prisoner. I enjoyed spending time in Guantanamo. Allah was testing my faith. When else would I have time to study the Quran and be able to read it in Arabic and train my mind? The prisoner replied. Over time, Holdbrooks got to know the prisoners better. He also had more discussions late into the night discussing various things from ethics, philosophy, history, and religion. Holdbrooks came to understand that the September 9th attacks were not actually Islamic teachings. When he was no longer serving at Guantanamo, Holdbrooks studied Islam via the internet. The prisoner with whom he often discussed discussions, a former chef from England, presented him with a copy of the Holy Quran. Holdbrooks said he had studied Christianity, Buddhism, and Judaism in his youth and had never found peace like in the Quran. For the first time, he said, he found the teachings that made sense. From beginning to end, the verses of the Quran make sense. There are no contradictions in the verses. This is not magic. These are just simple teachings for living life. After studying the Quran and many discussions for 3 months, Holdbrooks finally stated that he wanted to convert to Islam. Don't, said Holdbrooks' prison friend. His friend said converting to Islam meant Holdbrooks had to abandon his lifestyle and change. He had to stop drinking, using drugs, getting tattoos, and other things that Islam forbids. Little by little, Holdbrooks wants to change. He could feel that his body and mind were getting healthier. Finally, Holdbrooks married. In December 2003, Holdbrooks finally decided to say the Shahada. When I walk towards Islam, Islam runs towards me, he said.